Hey, everybody. So, welcome back to another episode of the Real Talk Uncensored podcast. I'm your host, August Witt, and our guest today is Kristi Denlinger. How you doing today, Kristi?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So my first question for you, or just to tell you kind of what this is all about. So, with the podcast, it's really about sharing your story and kind of trying to help others by talking about the lesson that you've learned, the things that you wish you would have done, the places that really helped you out. Really, just telling your story so that other people that listen to it, if they're in the same spot, it kind of gives them more insight into their own lives and things they can do to be the best versions of themselves.
Okay.
Um, so to start, then, could you tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of how you ended up at the Founded Youth?
So Kristi Denlinger, let's see here, back in, well, no, I guess it's quite a while ago. Back in July, I had a friend refer me to come down here. She was trying to help me because she knew she had been in the same situation, and out of all the different meetings that you can go to, she thought the Fountain of Youth was the best place because they don't just deal just with alcoholism, they also deal with drugs or getting back in the community. They deal with everybody in a nutshell. And so at first I was coming, but I was just kind of sitting there, kind of being quiet because I was like, okay, I'll just go through the motions and just kind of didn't take it seriously at first. And then after my last run-in with jail, I remember sitting in the cell and just thinking, this is not what I want with my life. I wanted something better. I did not want to ever be back there. I didn't want to do it to my family, my kids. I needed to change. I was ready to finally make that change. And so then I started intentionally coming and actually taking in what the meetings, the talking, the coping mechanisms, like everything that we were talking about. And the topics that we were talking about, they always brought forth like a lot of thought, even after the meetings. I would sit and kind of think about what it actually meant to me and how I could actually attach it to what I had done and what I had dealt with. And so the Fountain of Youth helped me tremendously as far as really opening up, actually holding myself accountable for my actions, what I had done in the past, and just really opening my eyes as to what could actually start happening, with quitting drinking and starting to make amends both with people from my past, people that are in my current world. And so I talk about it all the time. The Fountain of Youth has been amazing. I can't say enough good things about it.
That's so awesome. I mean, just everything that you're just saying about what you took away from Real Talk. I mean, that's exactly what we want people to do with that with that group talk is really think about your own life and how other people's stories can relate to yours and really think about so much. And it's honestly crazy because I can see how much you've grown so much just by the way that you answered that question. I'm sure that Kristi, I mean, I don't know how long you were like an alcoholic for.
Um, I would say it got its worst about 4 years ago. When I was I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. So I was just getting back into the workforce, and at first I started with part-time work, just at a grocery store, and got promoted to a higher position where the hours were just, I tried to just keep it in the evenings, but the position that I got put in required it to be mornings, evenings.
Right.
Sometimes you would work or you'd close the night before, open first thing in the morning. And I had a hard time sleeping, and I had a hard time dealing with stuff at home because there was just some personal stuff that was going on. And so my coping mechanism, one night I went into the liquor section and found a beer that was like a higher percentage, and I drank it, and I felt better. I was able to fall asleep, and so as the stress level, I wasn't adjusting well, is point blank on it, but as that wasn't being enough to get me calm enough to go to sleep, it just kept getting worse and worse, to the point where you can't go to sleep without having it. And I at the time I didn't have the mental help that I do now. I was able to switch practitioners, and it was somebody that actually listened to what was going on and actually take into account like different factors. And once I actually got the meds figured out, it was like I was on a much stronger path with it too, which it's been an amazing feeling, because I'm like, I can actually live, I can actually sleep, and I don't have to self-medicate. And so being able to handle everything and just taking in stride what my emotions are for certain situations, the coping mechanisms that I've learned through here and working with partners in change, dealing or figuring out that I don't have to over exaggerate certain situations, where before I would have been, I locked my keys in the car, boom, chaos. Now it's like, okay, lock my keys in the car, everybody does it. So definitely it's helped with that side of it too. And I didn't know at the time that I had, or, getting mental or brain health help at the time, just I was like, oh, that's just for crazy people, I don't need that, it's not that bad. And I just kept telling myself that, because the help that I was getting at that time, you go in for 6 minutes, oh, well, this is how you're feeling, this is new, oh, let's put you on something else. And it can get crazy, especially if you don't have somebody that's really there, that really wants to listen. And so, yeah, unfortunately, it played a huge part in getting my life straightened out too. But hindsight's always better than foresight.
Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. So could you talk a little bit more actually about the difference in care? Because you said you switched and then it really helped you kind of understand like your brain health more. Could you talk more about that?
So I was dealing with PTSD just from my past. I dealt with a lot of things that I didn't realize I didn't have to deal with. Whether it was, sorry to be TMI, but like verbal abuse, physical, just manipulation, and once I started to find out that that's not normal and that you can move past it, because the anxiety and depression just kind of came along with it. I isolated myself. I didn't get to go out with friends. It was a battle of wits, really, where I was just scared to kind of go against it. And after I learned that that's not something that's normal, that you have to deal with or anything, that really put a new light in it as well. So many people deal with the same scenarios and situations that I've been through, and they think the same thing. And once you actually surround yourself with the right people and get rid of all
the
too
negative
common,
people.
the toxic, people, it really does help. Once you're getting that part of it figured out, which honestly is huge, because you think you're worthless. You think you're not going to amount to anything without that significant other.
Yeah.
And you really have to break free from it. And it's hard. It's very hard because you're so used to it. But once you can break free from all the stereotypes and, deal with it on your own, it just opens the opportunities for you big time.
It changes your whole perspective on life.
I mean, you have to relearn habits. You have to relearn places to go. There's places I couldn't go to. Well, yeah, that I couldn't go to just because, automatic reaction was, I'm having a bad day. I have an excuse. So I just go and drink. And, that led to having seizures at one point. So, of course, I couldn't work because at the time I worked in manufacturing and I couldn't be running machines, loading machines or anything.
Right.
And so I was off work until I could get cleared, which, of course, you have to go through insurance. You have to have money to do all that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have the money. And so being isolated, having nothing to do, stay at home, I just kept drinking. I had nothing else to do. And sleeping the day away was like the best medicine. Which, when I think back on it, it's like, wow, I can't believe I got to that point. And then, I'm sorry, I got way off track.
No, you're all good.
What was the actual?
Well, the original question was just talking a little bit more about brain health and kind of how, because you said how beforehand, like you were saying, how brain health was only for crazy or to get certain help for that is only for crazies, but then that transitioned. What was the main factor that helped you to understand that was the help that was going to help you the most?
Well, when I started with the new practitioner, they took a look at the meds that the previous one had actually put me on. They're going, what is this for? What is this for? And I'm going, I don't know. I was just told to take it, and so I did. And once we got it narrowed down, and they're like, let's get you off all this, put you on just a few things instead of 8, and started to just really get to the core of what was going on. And I mean, once that started to change, like my whole persona, I would ask my parents and my sister and my kids, have you seen any changes, positive, negative? I want to hear it so I can go back to the doctor and let them know. So I found out real quick, it's not for crazy people. You just have to find the people that will listen and help you. They want to help you. You have to advocate for yourself. I guess the biggest thing is ask questions. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with them, and don't hide anything. Because the more you do, the worse you're going to be, and you're not going to get the help.
Exactly. And I've heard that happens with so many people with therapists and doctors. It's that they don't tell them everything, and it's like you're only hurting yourself by not truly opening up. I mean, it's hard to tell someone that as well because it's hard to open up to people. And
and depending on, I guess, the vibe that you get from the person that you're supposed to be getting help from, it will or won't work about being honest. Because there's times, there was times when I spoke with the previous one, and you would honestly feel like, okay, if I tell them I'm feeling like I'm gonna hurt myself or something worse or anything, you felt like you were gonna get thrown in the psych ward. Whereas once I switched and again got to the bottom of how I was actually feeling and how the meds were actually affecting everyday life, then it got so much easier to actually be honest. I wasn't afraid anymore of getting thrown back in the psych ward. And because fortunately and unfortunately, because I couldn't see a doctor for the seizures, the last time I was in, they're just like, these are stress-induced seizures, and you need to get back to work because sitting around is not doing you any good. Like, I agree. I'm terrible if I have downtime.
Yeah.
It makes me that much worse. And so that was better, but by then I had already become too far in and addicted, and it lost my job, obviously because of it, because of missing work, and just, yeah, the missing work was the biggest player in that. But then I was off work. I didn't know where to go, what to do, where to get help. And thankfully, the one time, I forget, at a meeting, I mentioned to Caprice that I didn't have work, and I told him, what my availability was. He actually took me aside after the meeting, which was awesome. Again, a listener. And he's like, so what do you do? And I told him, he's like, well, I have this job opportunity. Do you want to try it out? We can set up an interview, or, they helped me get the interview because at first, with the recent past, they weren't willing to hire me. And so, but thankfully, again, being honest and speaking with Caprice, with Kayla, with everybody, they really helped advocate for me to be able to get the position, and I feel like I've actually been able to prove myself in that position, because at first I was like, oh crap, I'm going to be here a couple months, I'm going to screw up something, and I'm going to be jobless again. And they helped me become more confident, and then getting started in the workforce, or at Lowe's actually. I still had some jail time to go through. And so, but thankfully I was able to get that done before I actually, like my first day there, and I'm kind of coming into work and looking at people kind of paranoid, like, do they know? Because, they put that stuff up there. And the more I got into it, the better it got, making friends, working with customers again. And, but with the brain health and, again, being honest with everything, that played a key role because I could actually be upfront without feeling like I was going to get judged. I learned to not care so much about that.
It kind of seems like you realize that the past doesn't define you. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Big time.
It's what matters now.
And
it's what you do now that matters.
Being able to just move forward, because I knew I had to prove myself to people. Is she just playing it? Not being or staying sober just for a couple months. And then I made it past the year, and it's like, damn, I'm feeling pretty good.
It is awesome.
Health-wise and everything, and getting back to, as my parents would put it, the old Chrisser. And I'm like, that's an amazing feeling, getting that trust and the rapport, reputation. It's all helped, and it just keeps you going because you see it working.
Exactly. I mean, that's so true. When you've been through something and done something that you're not proud of, it's really, when you start trying to take the steps forward, and then you find out that, oh, doing this instead is actually, it makes me happier, makes everyone else happier, and it makes you feel good, and that's the best kind of like motivation you can have right there, is that it's showing that it works.
Well, and it's very humbling. It was very humbling because having people that actually wanted to help, especially with the job situation. I didn't work a lot at first because I was afraid of the stress, and there was a lot of things that I couldn't do yet. But once I passed like the 6-month mark and kept it going, I was working more hours and being more open.
So one of my questions, it kind of backtracks a little bit, but from what I found, like people that have either been addicts or alcoholics, et cetera, part of the reason is partly because of childhood. Something that can you talk about that a
Really,
little bit?
really, there was nothing in my childhood that would have led up to it.
Yeah.
I mean, we lived out at Swiss Valley, so we were, I mean, sheltered from a lot of
Mm.
what people would have considered. Um, we didn't we weren't surrounded with people that um, promoted that.
Gotcha.
Uh, you know, my parents both worked for the county. My dad was security guard, and so um, I had a deputy actually give me my very first Barbie doll.
Really?
You know, so I wish I could say that something might have stemmed from any of that, but uh, I can't. It was a decent childhood. We
Yeah.
lived, I mean, our backyard was Swiss Valley, so we had tons of trails and acreage and nature and everything that some of the kids would have loved to have, and we had it in our backyard.
Yeah.
So,
Which is still which is okay too. There's nothing wrong with making choices even when you've had a good childhood, because that's just life. Things still happen.
yeah.
It's all right. Um, with everything that you've been through, what would you say was the breaking point of when you really decided that you want to change, and what's some of the main things that you learned, like the lessons that you really learned from that?
Seeing the pain in my kids' eyes. Um, when I would be drunk, I was nasty. I was so mean. And, you know, some of it I would remember the next day and some of it I wouldn't. And I'd be really leery to bring it up. Um, but even in my ex's eyes, you know, he kept trying to, towards the end, he tried to tell me, you know, you need to get to the meetings, you need to change, you need to. Um, and getting to that point where you get tired of seeing the look on your eyes, you get tired of saying, I'm sorry, um, it won't happen again. But then it does. And you can just see the disappointment because they want to help you, but you do isolate yourself because you're drinking behind the scenes. You're not going out. You're not, I mean, first thing in the morning, I'd be running to the gas station to grab something. And, you know, people saw me, but they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know I was going back to the house and drinking. Um, they're like, gosh, if I would have known, you know, I would have asked, hey, do you want to just go out for breakfast or do you want to do something other than drink? Um, but I was hiding it. Well, I thought I was hiding it pretty well, but, um, you know, even in talking with my parents and my sister and the kids, are like, we knew you were drinking. We just didn't know how to help. Um, you know, because a lot of people, when they are dealing with a family member or friend that are drinking or doing drugs or anything, they really don't know how to help you until they learn, you know, let's see, the biggest thing like my parents and family would say is, you know, we would try to help you, we would try to reach out, but you never would call back. You were just drinking. And unfortunately, they're like, well, that would be the elephant in the room. But we're like, well, at least she's here and she's not at home. Um, and so just not wanting to fail again was a huge player in it. You know, I figure out I'm just not good living on my own. That's just point blank. I've always had somebody there. And so moving out of the trailer, and moving back in with my parents was the optimal thing to really start the change. They don't have alcohol in the house. If I needed to go get gas, okay, use your debit card, because that way you don't have to go in. And that helped a lot. Sometimes I'd want to go in just out of habit. And there again, changing your habits, changing how you live, how you actually function. When you're a functioning alcoholic, I swear you're at your worst point. And so that was another huge player in doing the change. Eventually you get tired, but you have to be ready to change. You have to want the change, because if you don't,
then nothing's gonna change. I mean,
no.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I had gone to rehab, and it was a month where you're pretty much isolated with just this group of people, and you get to be okay in that situation, but you don't know anybody, so you learn more. I swear, about everything else versus taking a lot out of it. And so when I first returned, everybody's like, oh, she's fixed. They taught you how to deal with life in there. They didn't tell you how to deal with life outside. Yeah. So I went back to the same friends, the same situations, and was drinking like the same week I think I got out, where my ex had we were camping, and my ex came down, and first thing he did was offer me a beer. At the time, of course, I wasn't going to say no. I was like, oh man, that's going to taste really good. And then it spiraled back downhill, just having that and not knowing how to actually be prepared to deal with everyday life. And so there again, that's how it came back. But there again, I was having to go in front of my kids, say I'm sorry, and they'd be like, it's okay. And in my mind, I'm thinking, no, it's not. But I know you're putting on a strong front. And you get tired of the heartache that you're bringing to people. But once you are ready to actually make the change, it opens up a whole new world. You actually, if you're going to the grocery store, you're going to the library, or going to a group function or something, you see people and they're like, hey, congratulations, you're doing awesome. Opening up about being an alcoholic, and them seeing what changes can be made, as far as your health, as far as how you deal with people, being able to actually communicate, not having to think of your words before you actually say them. You can just automatically have a response. Yeah. It's just been amazing, the feeling, of actually being able to fit back in with society. And yeah, I guess that's about all on that. I don't. I have like paragraphs.
I mean, which is awesome, because you're really saying what you feel, and that's what people are going to connect to the most if they watch it and truly understand. And I mean, it makes me want to say how I'm proud of you, because I can really see that
Thank you.
You've done the hard work, and
it's not something that comes right off the bat. You have to put the work in. Yeah, and definitely. Just finding the help and realizing that there is hope and help is a huge player.
So you said at one point, where like your family and Kelly and your parents tried to contact you, and you didn't call back.
Mm-hmm.
If you could go back in time and tell that version of you some advice, what would you say? What would you say to yourself?
Get your head out of your ass.
Yeah.
Accept what you're doing is not right. Accept the help. Hold yourself accountable. Make amends. Talk. Don't try and hold it all in. Don't try and hide it. It is a sickness. And when people first hear about it, they're just like, oh gosh, she deals with alcohol. So many more people, if they didn't take that part into consideration, would be more open about it. There's a lot of people, just being proud of myself, I had put a post on Facebook about not like the whole journey, but just a brief thing on it, and how it had been a year. And so many people were like, yeah, I've been 3 months, 5 months, keep it going. So many people don't have the opportunity to actually move forward. They're not ready for it. Or losing friends, losing, like, people dying from it. That's a huge eye-opener. You'd see somebody 1 minute, you thought they were doing amazing. The next minute, oh, she passed away, or he died. And it's like, how? Drunk driving. They found bottles of vodka. Their body shut down because they didn't want the help. They didn't listen. They didn't open up.
And it happens so quickly too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the hardest part too, is that you never, when you're in that cycle of doing,
you never
stuff
actually
like
think you're
that.
going to get to that
Yeah.
point. Nobody wakes up and says, hey, I'm going to be an alcoholic, or hey, I'm going to be addicted to drugs, or nobody can predict that.
It'll sneak up on you.
Yeah.
So besides the Fountain of Youth and your family, is there any other, like, resources that really helped you in your journey, and the psychiatrist?
Well, going to Turning Point, it was court ordered, but I went. Oh, well, obviously I went. It was gratifying because, for one, at that point, I had already been ready for the change. At first, when I was going, I wanted to just kind of sit there, just like when I started here. I was going, and I was participating in everything. But the more I opened up, the more people were like, oh, is she coming today? Or, sharing the story. I didn't realize in sharing it was going to help people to really possibly come out about it and actually, again, talk and get help. And so that was a nice feeling, because that's another one that just kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities that were now going to come forward. The other one was, the heck was it? There was one that was court ordered. It was downtown it was at the Elm Street facility where I think the halfway house is.
Yep.
But there was a meeting too that I needed to go to, and that you don't realize how much time it takes to get past a lot of the court ordered stuff, the things that you have to actually jump through hoops to get to the end. And I mean, that was, I think, 9 months worth. And I mean, that stuff costs money. Nobody else pays for it. You have to pay for it. So it gets expensive. Even doing jail time, they charge you for a cut.
That's up.
It's kind of bogus. And the food definitely doesn't show for it. But those would be some of the contributors, because in all 3 meetings, you're dealing with everybody. You're dealing with the high class, you're dealing with the low class, and everything in between. But you can't, there's no judgment in the room. You can't judge because everybody has done the same stuff. Everybody has the same background. They've been in jail. They've gone through everything the same way you did. And so that's very humbling too. Just,
Everyone's made some mistakes in their life.
and they're still human.
Yeah.
They still have a chance. People they need to know they still have a chance. And with going through everything and knowing, oh yeah, have you been to jail? Yes, I have. Have you been to the psych ward? Yes, I have. They're not places I ever want to go back to, for obvious reasons. But the Fountain of Youth, I can't say enough good things about it. It just, Caprice, I mean, you, Graham, everybody here wants to see you succeed.
Yeah.
Nobody wants you to go back to where you were. They know what happens to people, but they don't want that. And they hold you accountable. They do check in. And it's kind of nice. At first I was like, this is kind of weird. Why are you sending me a text message? But I learned to appreciate it, because whether or not you were having a bad day or a good day, even, it was, if you're having a bad day, okay, what are you going to do? How did you handle it?
Yeah.
Did you handle it like a pro, or did you break down and get mad or sad? If you're having a good day, what happened? What'd you do? And just having somebody there that you knew if something was going on, like probably a couple months ago, Caprice, I was getting into a situation where I knew something needed to be done, but I wasn't quite sure the right way to go about it, and I had to make sure I was in the right mind for it. And I was able to talk to him even before the meeting. It's just like, I'll be right in, took me aside, and we talked, and he just looked at me, he's like, you know what the right thing to do is. I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, can you do it? And I just broke down in tears. I'm like, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can look them in the eye, bring up what's going on, and tell them they need to figure it out. And he's like, well, you know what you need to do. Does your sister know about it? I'm like, no, because I haven't talked to anybody. And, so my sister, she came out and I cried. And, at the end of it, I felt really good. I'm like, got my ducks in a row. Came into the meeting.
Yeah.
I know I was still like, but what did everybody want to do? Give me a Kleenex. They didn't ignore it. They didn't, you feel a lot of camaraderie at that point, which is nice. You're not used to it, and so you don't know what to do with it. But it gave me the courage and strength to do what needed to be done. And knowing that at any given time, granted, everybody is super busy, but I can leave a message or even just reach out in general, and knowing that there's
Really?
somebody there to listen and possibly give some really good, what's the word I'm thinking of? Advice.
Yeah.
Is comforting. There again, it just helps you gain more confidence in yourself and in sometimes doing the hard work, being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'll always remember that one, because that was one that I had been tasked to do and read in front of the class. And at first I was like, no, I can't do this. But it really makes sense, because you throw yourself out there. You do, and even in uncomfortable situations, you do have to get comfortable.
And you're gonna be okay in it.
Yeah.
And you're gonna learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best. I mean, everything you just said is beautiful, and it's so amazing to see how just showing somebody love can change everything.
Oh yeah.
And
a lot of tears, a lot of smiles, a lot of hugs gets you pretty far.
Yeah. Can't say enough about that. I mean, that's actually what Kelly said. like when I did her interview,
Mhm.
is how just showing if you can't do anything else, because you can never convince somebody to change, they got to
Right.
do it, right?
Mhm.
It's just about being there and showing them unconditional love, and that's really all you need to do.
Oh, and I put people through the ringer on that. I know I did. I can never go back and, change that. But just
You can only go forward.
family and Kelly, my kids, even my ex, um, they really showed how they were really caring and that they were sticking it out as far as dealing with me and my bitchiness and the wrath of what Kristi could be. I mean, my kids still sometimes, if something is going on or something's bothering me, they get a little protective because they're just like, Mom, it's fine. Okay, I just, wanted to take a look. Mom, it's fine. Okay, I'll just mosey on over here. And, but at the same time, it makes me sad that that's the portrayal of, or the way I was being seen and how I was acting.
Mm-hmm.
And just glad that it's changed.
Yeah,
I can't say enough about. I know I'm like on repeat with some of this because it's true. It's just so true.
I mean that's what people should hear is the truth, and really to seek to understand themselves and how that applies to them.
Mm-hmm.
So my last question for you, and thank you again for everything that you just said. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
If you had one message for the entire world, what would it be?
Make the change. Accept help. Seek out resources. Be honest with yourself. Hold yourself accountable. Still stand up straight. Keep your chin high. Don't give up. Somewhere out there, there is help. You just need to find it. Sometimes finding it is hard. Different cities, different states, they don't all have really good resources. Just be accepting. Be honest. I think I already said that. But be vulnerable. You can't, you could do it yourself, but you can't. You can lie to yourself. You can't do it yourself. You have to have help. You have to have the ability to really seek out the right help. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Like finding a group that's actually going to work for you. Some people it's AA. Okay, more power to you. It wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But then coming down here, thankfully, April sat down with me at Carlos O'Kelly's and we munched on chips and salsa. I'm grateful that she told me, hey, let's go down. We'll go down together. You don't have to do it by yourself. And if you can find the right community or camaraderie group, it's just going to help so much. It's going to help tremendously. It's going to open so many different things to you that you lied to yourself that weren't available. You're not crazy. You're not doing what nobody else is. It's normal. It's normal to get help. It's normal to get better too. And when the reality of it sets in, it's a smack in the face. But you'll get through it.
I don't think anyone has ever put that as well. That was one of the best last things to say that I've heard.
Thank you.
And thank you for everything that you just shared. I really think that this episode can help a lot of people.
I really hope so. I really hope so.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's more people out there.
Yeah. There's so many people who need help.
Mm.
Just gotta help them. Just gotta go find them.
Yep.
And show them some love. Well, thank you again
Mm.
for everything that you said, Kristi. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.